Campaign and conquest, let's play TTRPGs done right. War games and gaming, with Storm and Magenta tonight. We got a new system best you'll ever see. A paracosmic convergence of distance masterpiece. It's got the hit shots and plays every genre so well that you would think it was crafted in the depths of hell. It's campaigns and conquests, the best that there is. War games and gaming, with a system that wins. Whether you're a pro or a fighting kid, we've got something better, it's really the shit. Custom worlds, random tables galore, got all the backgrounds and so much more. It's campaigns and conquest, the only true way. War games and gaming, all night and all day. It's campaigns and conquest, better subscribe to the show. War games and gaming, and now you know. It's campaigns and conquest, and we're feeling alright. War games and gaming, we're Storm and Magenta tonight.
All right, welcome everybody. This is Magenta, your co-host tonight, and welcome to Campaigns and Conquests. And thank you for joining us. Storm is here with us tonight, and we're going to be covering tonight's topic, which is creating living worlds. So we're going to be getting into some details of how that's done and how you different ways to make that successful. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Storm. Say hi to everyone, and
How's it going, folks?
I hope everyone's doing well tonight. Um, so this is a topic where Storm is definitely going to take the lead on this one because this is a little bit of a stretch for me with my level of knowledge here. So I'm going to be learning along with you guys today. If any of you have any questions or anything, please come in and join us in the chat. Request to come up on the mic or on camera, whichever your preference is, and we'd be happy to have you join. Also, friendly reminder too, please, if you are so motivated, please like, subscribe, and share the channel with friends, anyone you think might be interested in it as well, to help us grow. We certainly appreciate all the help we can get. And Storm, you want to take it away with this topic here and kind of explain what you mean by a living world and domain play overall, and then how you get to where you have a good system to do that.
Yeah, it's not just domain play, but just a living world. One of the things that I saw today that's been discussed over about a week and a half here is people looking at it and say, well, I don't really dig the sandbox idea and I don't really understand it. And, or it's this or it's that, and kind of misinterpreting it a little bit. Um, and so I thought we'd get a little bit deeper into it. So one guy said, or gal, or somebody, account says, I don't know how to touch something off. I don't like the idea of just being dropped into a world and there's nothing there. Another person says, well, a sandbox is just like a message board or a task board. People just have a selection of adventures to go play. Well, it's not really meant to be either one of that. Um, it's something like Second Life. If people are familiar, of course, that analogy only works if you know what Second Life is. But a completely open world, um, where everything's happening, and you have uh, what they like to use in these TTRPG conversations as agency to do whatever the hell you want, any way you want. You want to sit in a bar and get blotto as a character, you can. Now, um, that may sound boring to people, probably would be You know, here's the thing: you're not in the bar alone, so maybe something happens. Well, how do we know if something's going to happen? Well, there's a what's often called a reaction roll. Reaction rolls usually mean there's some NPC that the party is interacting with, and a DM randomly decides the general demeanor and or way the NPC responds is based on a reaction roll. The NPC's reaction to the PC's discussion. But I use them more as just kind of a machine um, to make the world go. So let's take drunken bar. Maybe you're an annoying drunk. Maybe you talk stupid, mad trash when you're wasted.
Oh,
And so maybe somebody gets sick of that and decides they want to start something with you. Um, maybe in how do you put it? Alcoholic fueled romance occurs, but you actually get rolled because somebody's out there just waiting for somebody to have that extra uh, couple of drinks so that they can, you know, take advantage of you back in the bedroom or anything like that. There could be a whole list of things, and those things are rolled upon so that it shows what's going on. Now, not everything that I do has to do with um, the player character or party. Maybe you're just sitting there minding your own business, having a beer, and a bar brawl breaks out by with other people, and you're free to watch and or participate or leave or whatever. So, um,
I could see that happening in like an Wild West scenario. You walk in and you just happen to be, a bystander, but somebody thinks someone else is cheating at the poker table, and next thing you know, the chairs are flying, and
sure,
it's
yeah, it's a
yeah,
fairly old school, you know, 60s Western trope, John Wayne
right.
or Jim Gardner and the old support your local gun fighter, that kind of. So, but yeah, that's a microcosm of it. But taking those tables, and what I do is I link them together. There may be a causation. Pretty hard to have something outside of the bar or inside the bar go outside of the bar, but let's take it on a more macro level. Um, country A decides to invade country B because country A is low on grain or wheat. So they want to take, those guys over there are weak, but they've got a lot of wheat fields. We're going to take some. But their intelligence or their lack thereof, or whatever it is, they didn't realize that country B had made some sort of defensive pact with country C, and now they find themselves embroiled in a larger war or something like that. Maybe country C decides to get involved, or maybe it decides to break its treaty because it thinks I don't want none of that. Even though I signed a treaty, I'm not going to do it or whatever. So there's all sorts of things that can turn into a domino effect, or at least have consequences or events that happen outside of the area. So by creating these in depth, I use Excel personally. Do it any way you want, but they're connected. They're not just an individual chart necessarily. Some are individual. I mean, like I say, a bar doesn't really travel outside.
Maybe.
What stays in Vegas, that kind of story. Um, but that turns into a machine that runs a world to the point where it wouldn't be very fun, but I could run the whole world off those charts, whether there's players and characters involved or not. The charts will tell
I
me who
would think
get.
so.
Hmm? Go ahead.
I mean, you being a human, you're not giving up your human agency though. So I would think that you have the option of, mixing and matching. You get a result that's like, "Oh, I don't want to do that." You can reject it and try again, right?
Well, no, these aren't things that are knowledge of the player. These are things that are
Uh-huh.
going, not necessarily, I mean, they might become so, but this isn't something the player's rolling on or anything like that. This is things that I'm doing as a DM in the background to make the game, make the world live. You know,
Okay.
am
But
I
I
not
mean,
making
with the
sense?
randomized,
Because
well,
I
what I'm
often
trying to
don't.
say is, well, no, what I'm trying to say is sometimes even in the best randomized system, you can get a clunker of a result where it just that doesn't make sense with the rest of the context of things that have happened before. You would have as a DM, it's your discretion to decide whether or not you you feel that any particular randomized event is a keeper or, toss that one back and try again.
Well, I mean, if you're trying this on your own and that kind of
Mhm.
scenario occurs, sure. I mean, you do what works for you.
Right.
Without try not to make this sound snooty or anything, but maybe after you make that correction or discard that result for another one, reevaluate those charts and see if you can, I try to do it. I'm not sure as hell not perfect, but I try to make sure that I design these charts in a way that they don't lend themselves to that, the way that I word
I
them and the
see.
results that I use and things like that. And if that comes up, or maybe next time in between sessions, go under the hood and tinker with it and word it in such a way that those kinds of problems don't come up, or at least are minimized. But yeah, sure, if it you can play around with it. I'm not a big fan of the dice fudging, but if something's going to blow your game up because a result didn't work, I you know it's your
Or
table.
or like I mean, some result happens that's just like not so much that it's not a result that you like, but it just doesn't make logical sense
Yeah,
in
yeah.
in the context of the rest of what's going on.
And that's why I
You
like
know,
to have a lot of people evaluate my stuff, because sometimes I'll write something and it makes perfect sense to me, and then I'll paste it into the chat or something, and people go, "What the fuck is that guy talking about?" And I go, "Well, wait a minute." Huh? But yeah, if that happens, yeah, you might want to go roll again. But
right.
I recommend going back and reevaluating the chart. If you see one from me that does that, please let me know. Contact me so I can fix it, because that kind of stuff drives me nuts, and I don't want it to occur. So, but
Oh, I gotcha.
yeah.
Makes sense. So
Mhm.
what kind of results can you give us like an example of what kinds of things would be, a scenario and what you might when you might roll to have a random event occurrence and how that might play out, just kind of a brief example.
Yeah. Um, Again, the decision making of if I have countries, which I typically do in my worlds, uh, the higher management, the king, the president, whatever, the emperor, the head cheese, whatever they call the guy or gal or thing that rules.
Or
Uh,
being.
yeah, right. It might be, a demon or something, but whatever it is, they'll make decisions, on a chart. What are they going to do with the empire today? Just take in the tax money, make sure the trains run on time, invade a neighbor, consider some sort of subterfuge to get one up on there. I'm a big people mocks this stuff sometimes if they're not into it, as being you want the Game of Thrones thing, and they use the Game of Thrones as like a pejorative. And
Oh,
I think,
Game of Thrones is totally cool. I mean,
yeah, I liked
sorry,
it, but I
I did
like
too.
the
Although
yeah.
the ending I thought was it's like you came so close.
Yeah, they blew it. They blew it on the finale, no doubt about it, as far as the show goes. But so did Martin. Sounds like he's going to blow it on the finale with the books. But anyway, a world. Just look at our world. There is a web of political intrigue. Obviously, a lot of people are sick of it. They don't want to hear it. That's not their thing. They just want to bash the orc. And that doesn't, all this going on doesn't mean you can't just go bash the orc. But
Mm-hmm.
what it does is it makes the world breathe instead of being this two to, we've might be a little repetitious in some of these things if you watch them from time to time, but I'm preaching something that I think is really valuable. And that is, instead of having a 2D world where you just approach, the barkeep, and he's got something or she's got something to tell you or a rumor to spread or something like that, and that's it. Now you have a world where said barkeep is getting up in the morning, having his breakfast. I mean, you're not going to be subjugated to those details, and the storyline isn't that detailed. But nonetheless, he's not. We the last time we talked about this, we used the Lord of the Rings or the MMO analogy, and it still works. If you ever played Lord of the Rings or a lot of these other MMOs, there's NPCs that are just standing around. I remember Star Trek Online was the same way, you know, and they were just in this place, and you would run to them, and they'd give you a quest, and it would be a couple of sentences, and you'd go do it, and then you'd go and talk to them, and they go, "Oh, good, you did it. Here's your reward." Well,
Or
that's
go back and tell this other person, and yeah, then they
yeah, go
send you
run
on an
around, do
extra
the
quest.
cell
Yeah.
phone quest we used to call themselves, right?
Mm.
But I want it so that person has a life to live, and they're not just standing next to the desk or the wishing well or wherever the hell they are waiting for you to come back. They're moving around and they're doing things, and those and their interactions with other NPCs can affect the world for everybody, the PCs and the rest of the deal, the rest of the population. This lends itself to a living world uh, that many parties can partake in. There's the other thing is all this. Oh, I have this. Like I just had some guy say, I just want to dungeon crawl. All I'm about is the tactical details of how to clear a dungeon. Okay, if that's your thing, you can still do that in a living world. But if I have a living
Yes.
world where I have a server where I can have all sorts of different players playing at different times around the clock, then you're then that's all you're doing. You're going to your bar or to your general store to buy your rope and your oil and all that lanterns, and go find the dungeon of your
And your
choice that you want,
10-foot pole.
and
Don't
your
forget the
10-foot
10.
pole. Yeah, that's a staple of dungeon crawl, and you can go do that. But other people might be into helping King what's his face take over the neighbors or defend themselves from taking over the neighbors or whatever it is, or looking for that special magic sword that talks to them, or
The chance to be a hero.
right, whatever it is, or just
Hmm.
accumulating enough gold so that you can buy your own castle, or you name it. But I want everybody in the world doing stuff all the time, and that doesn't mean I'm rolling dice individually for each human being or rabbit or donkey or whatever in the hell. But um, there'll be enough of it that you won't just walk past a farmer that you see off in the distance plowing a field, and then you come back 8 hours later and he's still there or whatever. Everybody will be moving it 24/7 as it is, and that's just a bit. What that ends up being is like a big scenario generator. Instead of
Right.
somebody saying, well, oh, you've just created 5 or 6 different storylines and I'm supposed to pick 2 of them. No, the storyline, I don't know what the storyline is. That's the best part of DMing something like this. You have no idea what's going to happen. You're not leading them down any path. People say, well, even if you have a sandbox, you have to start somewhere. And if you do it certain ways, they may be right. But in this sense, you don't have to do that at all. That will come to you as soon as you start rolling dice on all these tables that you've made. Now, some people go, "Well, I hate tables, and that sounds like a lot of work." Well, maybe it is to you, but to me, it's a hand cranked machine. I roll on these charts, and the globe starts to turn. And that's a living world to me.
So, how frequently do you do these actions where you are rolling? Is it triggered by a player? Like, I guess the question is, if a tree falls in your randomized world and there's no player character there to hear it, does it really fall?
It falls, and it might be something that affects things that you have no knowledge of, nor will ever hear about. There's more going on behind the scenes than just you. You're five. Some people get mad. They say, well, I want the whole point of this story is I'm supposed to be the center of the world, and what I do is supposed to affect everything. And I get what they're saying. They want to be part of a heroic, epic tale. I get it. And it doesn't mean you can't be, but I like the idea, like I said, of having this kind of system where I could have more than the same five people once a week playing. Now I can play with a bunch of people. My Star Wars universe right now. That's why I tell people go, oh, he's crazy. He says he can handle as many people as he can get a hold of. Even Magenta's like, well, you had too many people at one point. No, there's not too many people, because when I make it a living world, it doesn't matter, because I'm
There's
I've
always
divided.
something going on,
There's
and no
always
matter
something
where
wrong.
you are in the world,
No matter where
you
you
would
are and
have a
what time you've decided to play, whether it's Sunday morning at 10 or
right.
Tuesday at 12 midnight or whatever it is. But as far as when I make these rolls, it's all done on a turn basis. I divide the day into a set. I don't really do like alternative calendars. A lot of people try, there's a lot of systems that have an alternative calendar to try to make it more immersive. It's not all, we don't have the same 7 days a week that Earth does. And I get it, but to me, it just is a headache. It's the one thing where I go, yeah, that's not a detail I want to get detailed on. It just makes it easier for everybody if you keep the Roman calendar and the 24 hours that we work with. And so I do that. But you have, depending on the scale and depending on the system, it could be 6 4-hour phases. It might be 3 8-hour phases, but the rolls will happen, um, during those time. I call them turns, but
Mhm.
you know, and now again, I use Excel, so I'm not out there. I mean, as fun as it may be, it would be a little bit. I'd get carpal tunnel if I was throwing dice for every one of these. Some people then they start getting their nose like, oh, if it's not a real dice, it's not real random. Technically true, but I'm out there, pounding the compute key on the Excel and getting results that way. So it's efficient and fast. It works real great. But I'm I'm the man behind the curtain, you know, running the show. And a lot of that information may not even come to knowledge for certain players, but that's okay. For me, it's a great way to randomly generate uh, storylines. Think of it as, for people who are familiar with RPGs, think of it as a hex crawl or a dungeon crawl, but in a different dimension. It's not just, I'm not randomly just determining the terrain you're walking through, or whether you're on a 15-foot hallway, or, a dog leg to the left with a torch on the wall or whatever. It's randomly determining what everybody's doing inside the world all the time. So I'm a big Star Wars fan.
Oh,
So yeah, yeah. If you haven't known
sorry.
that,
I had a fright. Sorry. Sorry about that.
and I can show you some of the ones that I have used. Hopefully, this will actually work. No, that's not what I want, kids. I want. Okay, it's gonna be like that. How about this one? That one, reaction roll. All right, kids. I hit the right. Can you see? Yes, I've done them in Chat GTP, and I don't give a.
GPT.
Some people get so wound up about using AI, and it's really not that big of a deal. But these were quickly made up for demonstrative purposes, but they're very similar to the kind of thing I do. Here's a fleet battle decision table. So, uh, will they come at you uh, without much regard for their self-preservation? Will they have a more full assault? The fleet commits to an aggressive attack, prioritizing offense over defense. Um, Aggressive advance. Will they maneuver and push on you? Maybe pin and harass. So it has all these different tactics, general tactics. So if you're a rebel military player and you get involved with, for however the scenario starts, wandered into them, decided to attack them, whatever it was, some imperial force, this chart would be rolled to give some idea on how the commander has decided, uh, the imperial commander, that is the NPC commander, decided how to handle things, and it can be weighted by modifiers, so that you won't just randomly panic and flee, even though that you massively outnumber them or something like that. It'll be weighted to give a more uh, realistic reply in the context of the scenario. So here it even gives you some of the possible modifiers. And I have these for ground battle. I have them for diplomacy. I have them for managerial choices. Again, like I spoke of earlier, is the king of this realm going to focus on, you know, enriching his people or himself or his world? Is he looking at some sort of, industrial development? Are they an agrarian society and he's just, tilling the land and feeding his people, and they're all the Smurf village and, humming through the world and their life and they're peaceful? Or, are they more aggro and looking to conquer and become the next empire or whatever, stuff like that? So, and then there's another, see, it's not just that. It's not just one decision. Okay, you've decided, or the role has been aggro. Okay, well, aggro how? Are they going to just flat out start invading people? Maybe they're going to use subterfuge. Maybe they're going to use political pressure, economic pressure. There's like
Maybe they'll destroy from within.
say there's all sorts of, right.
Or, yeah.
So one chart leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. And I know there's a lot of people, like I said, that hate charts and they just start curling their lip on this, but it's a system that works. It's not half as complicated. It's making them up isn't difficult. What I use to connect them is just the way that I name them, and I have a field that doesn't have anything to do with calculation that talks about, okay, when you get this, here's where you go next. What kind of defense are they going to mount? Aggressive, passive, whatever it is. And then that leads to the next one. Okay, this kind of passive defense, or this is the formations they're going to use, or something like that. And just keep rolling up these decisions so that you've generated this broad action instead of having to script everything. So that way you don't have to make up like the one account that I was looking at, saying, well, how am I going to make this up? And I still have to find ways to keep people within certain borders and all that. Not here. Now you can very literally say that there is absolute unfettered player agency here without having to even light a fuse or any of that stuff. Like I had a game that was a Star Wars game that was supposed to be a sandbox, but at the beginning, um, they started as prisoners. Now, some people would say, well, that just removes agency. Now they don't have a choice. Well, yeah, but you know, you can be a prisoner. So you're going to, the prison sentence thing is, is going to be the way it is. And then from there, because you had to have that initiation. So the person who's making this comment on social media isn't wrong, uh, except for when there's the statement that it has to be done that way. It can be done that way, and it makes sense until you do what I'm doing. Then it doesn't have to be done. Now the players are just there, and this is what happens next, and they can, make their decisions based on what they observe going on around them. Make sense?
It does make sense, and there's always choices. I think if you're running into where you feel like you don't have different choices, even if they're not good ones, like accepting um, a bad condition until you get through it and find a way out. It's still a choice that you're making, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's never a situation where you end up in a scenario where it's just like, well, I have no choice about anything. It's just going to be this way. Um, except maybe if you get killed, I suppose.
There's a couple things we talked.
Right.
Right? Yeah, I talked with some other big designers in the OSR indie, like Alex Macris, and I says, what do you think about like if let's the scenario I used was this: you want complete player agency. Okay, fine, but you you've made the choice as you being the player, you playing the player. The player's made the choice to enlist in a military, and that choice comes with the knowledge that if you enlist in the military, somebody somewhere's going to be telling you what the hell to do, and you're going to have to do it or face, consequences. And, well, see, that's not agency. Now they can do that. Now they have to take orders, and now they're being railroaded. No, they can tell their superior officer to go f himself. It's That's not going to be the end of it, but they can do that. They're perfectly,
You could choose to desert or
sure.
betray. I think that happened in Star Wars a couple of times at least.
Yeah, we had a player who just he didn't enlist really because he wanted to as much as I don't want to die. So, and people can say, well, that doesn't sound like agency. And well, no, that just is a storyline. He, you had to be there to understand how that wasn't. So, so he never got on the idea of, saluting or anything like that. So he was always kind of half-assed, if not rebellious about that sort of thing. And, and his superiors sometimes got in his face and got it, you know what I'm talking about. But
Hmm.
the choices were still there. But if you now, what happens if you get drafted? So we can't have the draft as a concept in any world because it removes agency. I'm getting more into philosophy about what agency really means, but one way or the other is. Uh, I just like the idea of this world because it gives the player. There's no. Well, we have to start somewhere. You'll hear a lot of people say, well, sandbox usually starts in a bar with a rumor, and whether they want to act upon that particular rumor or not, that's their choice. But if, most people jump on it because they're impatient and they want to get into the adventure. But here you don't have anything like that. You you just, here's where you are, here's where you start. It requires a slightly more in-depth backstory to the character that a lot of people get real iron fisted about. Oh, I don't want to hear about backstory. It's kind of become this front that some people do. Like you're not a true this or whatever unless you're adamantly flip it and and hateful of backstory. But in my system, the paracosmic convergence, we have a kind of a life path system, and it doesn't give you a verbose backstory, but it it controls the backstory, so it gives you pertinent information that can be used or is needed during the game without dealing with the overly creative player who's decided to write 5 pages of fiction as a backstory for a character's first level. And that backstory tells you why you're here in the first place, here being this world, or the position you start out in the sandbox. Gives you some context to that, because I never like the idea of some guys play it like you're, most of them are guys in this case, play it like you've just spawned into the world like it's a first person shooter or something, and there's no context to your presence within it. And I think players would be like, well, what the hell do I do? I don't even know who I am or what I'm doing here. So with a little bit of a stronger backstory, it works better. So now you know what you're doing there, and from there
A motivation,
you can go milk
like what
cows, or
drives my character. Yeah,
right, yeah,
well,
steal chickens
who
or whatever the hell you want to do.
but you can't kick the chickens. It's not allowed. Nowhere. It really isn't. Used to be, but not anymore.
So that's a Lotro reference. So you have any other questions, or does
It
it make
is.
sense? Is there anybody listening that goes, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, or this sounds like it won't work, or has any challenges or questions, comments, criticisms? Anybody? Bueller?
It's just me here, but I think I understand it. I mean, it makes sense to me because I am a part of your story when you say someone who says, sandboxes. To me, having something that's too open-ended, it makes
Nope, Kelly
it's
made it.
kind of
Hi,
like
Kelly.
that. Hi, hi, Kelly. It's like the white paper syndrome, You get your colored pencils all laid out and you're going to draw something, and then that white paper staring back at you and you're like, too many options. I narrow it down. Give me a genre, something. Give me some specifics to work with, like,
Right. It's
so
like
that
that.
I have a
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, I mean, it just helps with the part of being creatively involved in it. Um, And if you're the type of person who's looking for a first person shooter type of game, I mean, you can still take your character in that direction if you want to. There's nothing preventing you from it, but to have, I mean, at some point you got to have a target or a purpose for why you're a first person shooter. What are you shooting at and why? And who's shooting
Right.
back at you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there
Exactly.
has
Yeah.
to be some, and that's not railroading to me. That's narrative storytelling.
Exactly. And that's
If
why
that
when I
makes it, yeah.
does make sense, and that's why with my system that you have the backstory. You know, it's a it gives you some purpose, and you start with some goals, irregardless of where you start in a world or what world you start in. We have motivations as part of your character creation, and they may be like, what was one of yours? Not be lame anymore, and we always make that joke
Right.
because yeah, Lacey has a
Right.
bad
I want to
leg. She was kicked by a
cure my
mule.
lameness.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you know,
It wasn't a
uh,
mule. It was a horse. Give me some
was it a
credit. I
horse?
don't truck
Okay,
with mules.
but so you can do that now. So you get put into a world or a continent or a campaign thing um, like we've made. It doesn't matter that you don't know anything about it. As a player who's motivated to achieve these goals, because these goals make your character more capable, and that's kind of the whole point. You're going to naturally start from the role play perspective. Hey, do you know where there's a good healer? Like a
Right.
real good you're gonna start looking around and asking. I don't need to write some, you know, artificial motivation to push you in a direction or railroad you. You'll just naturally want to get that done.
Right, because it's a part of my character. What I'm driven to do is to
Hmm.
solve the situation, and
Hmm.
also hopefully to find my elven boyfriend who is,
That's right. That's the other
been
motivation. Yeah.
possibly kidnapped. Yeah. Yeah, that
Right.
was my secondary motivation. So who
Mhm.
knows what happened to him.
Right.
But I've got some purpose for, because I mean, if it is true, the trope holds true for a lot of people, and I think kind of it has become a cliche, but one that people are comfortable accepting to some degree. That you start off in a bar, and that's where you overhear a rumor and you decide what to do with it. Kind of similar to Westworld when when the lady drops the can of peaches. Do you pick it up and hand it to her and start that quest, or do you just ignore that and move on to
Right.
the more substantial quests
Right.
that come along later? It's up to you whether or not you take the bait on that.
The
But it's
difference. Sorry. Go ahead.
sorry,
I'm
but
bad.
it's a trope of kind of you're sitting there in the bar and you might miss an obvious clue, but it's a story that is built that would occur whether you were playing it or whether Joe Blow down the road was playing it, which is different from what you've got going with your character creation process that gives you a motivation that's uniquely your own. And then
Hmm.
you're in a world that's ever changing around you, and when you go into a bar or an establishment, a shop, or just walking down the street and you encounter another person in that world, you know what you're going to try and find out from them.
Right.
You're not sitting there going, "Oh, what do I do now? Okay, I guess I order something from the bar and then
Right.
I listen to hear what other people are saying, and
Yeah.
then, maybe I
Yeah.
go on this adventure."
Right. You're going to be motivated to explore the area and find out a bunch of it, find out about it without um, the artificial modern version of here's your handout map, and all
Mhm.
that stuff that you wouldn't have knowledge of necessarily, especially if your background is some kid off the farm that's out to seek fame and fortune. Well, you've never left the farm. What the hell you know about the rest of the world? If you're poor and all you were doing was milking cows and cleaning stalls, then you don't know. So hell, you probably had to get directions to get to the city in the first place. So stuff like that. But I was good. I
Mhm.
jumped on the Westworld reference because unlike Westworld, um, you're tomorrow if you don't pick up the can of peaches the way that park was supposed to work before it went crazy, was that tomorrow when you went back there at the same time, the same lady would
There
drop the
again,
same
yeah.
can. Yeah, and that's what I don't want for the players when I make the world. That that I want that lady and everybody else to be doing something contextual every day instead of an amusement park where you just keep going back. And it's the same thing, like a Chuck E. Cheese, where it's the animatronics and they're singing "Happy Birthday" to you. The only difference is tomorrow it's little Jenny or little Bobby, but they're still all sitting in the same position, singing the same song at the same time. So that's why I jumped on that. But yeah, so it's a combination deal. It's not that you can't use this system with other RPGs, but I think it really lends itself with what I've made or what we've made more accurately with the paracosmic convergence because the life path portion of the character creation with the motivators really works to complement it. So
And
people,
we did a run through of that, and it was just a brief run through, and there wasn't a whole lot of preparation. Just the character creation was really all that there was. And I was surprised at how natural it felt to kind of make choices based on what I knew about my character. And the role playing became a whole lot easier because I had detail about my character that informed like what would I do next. I know enough about the backstory, but it wasn't too complex, but just enough so that I could work within that and kind of it felt more authentic, I guess is the word that I'm looking for, rather than times in the past where I create my own backstory and it's just kind of like, yeah, I don't really know what else I can do here, or I don't know how to behave in a specific situation because I didn't put that particular detail in the story or in my backstory.
Sure,
I had plenty of other details that weren't relevant, but I didn't have anything,
sure, and that's a
to tell
typical thing.
me how I would. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry, go
especially
ahead.
for newer players. Now, if
Mhm.
it's a little bit easier if you're, like Dragonlance. Dragonlance
Mhm.
is a campaign world for D&D that had a tremendous amount of fiction novels, fantasy novels about it
Mhm.
written. So if you're a big fan of that and you've read, you'll know a lot more. You'll understand. Like you could, just like if you were being that you're Star Trek, we'll use a Star Trek. You know the planets to some degree. You understand who might be coming from them or what. So you feel more comfortable writing a backstory or origin point of a person in Star Trek because you have some knowledge of the world. Some of these
Right.
veteran players that play in Dragonlance and have a lot of knowledge because they've written all the or read all this fiction about it. It's easier, but for somebody like you, who goes, well, I don't know, like I just I guess I'm an elf, and then it doesn't really mean anything when you play in all these different things. Here's
Right.
a
Yeah, all my characters were all cookie cutters.
Yeah,
But yeah, so I want to call out a post from Creatures who joined us tonight, Creatures Chronicles. Um, thank
on
you for
X.
joining us. And sorry, yeah, thanks for joining us tonight. And yeah, we're going to keep doing these regularly. You can look for us on Mondays and Wednesdays. Are we sticking with that schedule, or
Yeah. Hmm.
we might add some additionals in there, but I think that's going to be our uh, times that you want to be able to rely upon. So, if you're looking for us, those will be the nights. But our shows are going to stay up. So, anything you miss, if you want to come back and catch later, you can always take a look at that on the channel. Just make sure that you like and subscribe and share with your friends if you want. And thanks again for being here.
Yeah.
And again, if
Early.
anybody yeah, if anybody listening right now has any questions or comments that they like to make, or any experiences you'd like to share with games of your own, what worked well for you and what didn't, please make a request and we'll invite you up
Sure.
on the mic,
Yeah, we'll talk.
or
And
on
that's
camera.
in the interim. Just give you to qualify making it a deep dive. I'll just give you a quick overview of how the sausage is made. Well, how do you do this? Well, how we do this, or how I do it, but Magenta's helping. We have two continents that we're working on. So the first thing I do, and they're both going to be on the same world, but we've got one fairly fleshed out, maybe about 80%, 75,
Hmm.
80%. So that's the first part is collaborative world building with as many people as I can get to collaborate in just spitballing ideas. And then
That
let
process in itself is quite a
is
lot of
really
fun. The
it is
creative world
enjoyable.
building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. And then when you get that all set up, now you know who's because you've spitballed it. We know about this group of dragon cultists and this group of magic hating Arthurian, like King Arthur, but not, that kind of thing. And so we know their motivations, we know who they are, we know their culture, their politics, we know a little bit about their military prowess, power, economics, and
There's some built-in friction points that look like
sure,
they could build up to something more later, or maybe not. You never know.
exactly, exactly, and we know what kind of um, monsters or wildlife stuff like that. Doesn't seem like it would be relevant, but it is. So you basically have a very, well, I shouldn't say very detailed, But if you ever looked at something like the CIA fact book, I don't know why you would, but I do stuff like that for other reasons. But even maybe a Wikipedia page where they discuss, I think most Wikipedia pages on countries have, what their political system is, what their chief export and import is, some basics about their culture and geography and history and stuff like that. It's basically what we do. So you have some personality to the thing. Now, based on that, you can make the charts. Again, is it some off, agro fascist that wants to take over his neighbors because he's, he or she is like that, okay, well then you have reaction roles that are very warlike and very, prone to invasion or war or something like that. But if they're passive or whatever they are, you also know what's going to keep the country going economically, what's going to make it hurt economically, things like that. So you can make trade tables. Maybe you have a country who's kind of very much into economics, the Ferengi of fantasy, if you were, something like that. I'm more of a sci-fi person in fantasy, so I'm struggling to find a fantasy analogy, but something like that. So they're going to be very
Dwarves
aggressive.
would apply. I mean, if you
Yeah,
think
some
about it
perhaps
that
so.
way, they're very, very materially motivated in
Yeah.
the Lord of the Rings stories. So that
So
would
they
be a
might
good
be,
analogy.
yeah, right. Then okay, yeah, you're right, dwarfs, something like that. So they might be kind of hard nosed about trade. They might be looking to get, a little bit more, maybe, or maybe they'll start throwing out some tariffs or something like that. And uh, you'll have that deal. Culture as well. Sometimes, you know, what if you had a place like, as tragic as it is, Kashmir, where there's, or the old Northern Irish deal, where the two, because there's religion too. Always have religion because it's a point of contention and maybe something like that. And if you know that, as Magenta said earlier, you have these friction points, then you can make tables that represent that friction point. How close are they to going to a war over this or whatever it is? So, and then you
And
have,
can your character influence that?
right, and if not,
Because or your party, maybe not just one character, but the whole party, your activities. Could you
mhm,
be the one, you steal a specific shipment that was destined to go to a specific place and was critical to maintaining a balance of power. And because of your interference, now that balance has shifted and,
right,
um, a neighboring country takes advantage and then you have a war erupting. And you get to deal with the consequence of it,
right,
because you helped start it. So,
right,
not
mhm,
railroading if it was your own actions that led to it. It's
yeah,
it's you
yeah.
know.
And you might not be able to, if you can't influence it, but you want to. Well, then how do you go about getting the power to be able to do it? Is it strength, magic, clout? You know, getting elected? You know, whatever it is. So it's not that you'll be without choice, or you'll be, well, I don't know what to do.
Or
It'll
if it's
just
a
manifest.
monarchical situation, you might have to, you know, kill the guy who was set to inherit instead of you. What
Right,
who knows?
right.
It's
Or
Game of
maybe you
Thrones,
have to
right?
seduce and get funky with
Mm.
the right other person to the old joke of, well, it's a joke, but the old, you can marry more money in 5 minutes than you make your whole lifetime type of thing. My grandfather used to say that. But marry into the
Mm.
deal, so um but that's how it does. And then if we make a profile of some of the prominent movers and shakers, uh the leader, who's, maybe some people in the council, but not just government people. Who's the guy that's got or gal. I always say guy. I don't know, but whoever has some money that or influence because they're the baroness of that or the duke of that or what whatever it is that can influence things. Usually a predominant business, predominant religious, predominant political, predominant military character, at least one of each that uh, influences the way the country goes. And they have personalities and they have charts for what they do based on that personality. You know, maybe they're treacherous or, you know, something like that and looking to subvert
They've
the
been
king from
collecting
within.
to go back to a Game of Thrones reference, maybe they're Littlefinger and they've been collecting secrets on everybody, and they may not have any obvious power, but
Mm-hmm.
they've spent their whole entire time, collecting everybody else's secrets,
Mm-hmm.
and then they're able to leverage that to get all kinds of people, and you don't even know who they've got influence over because it's dark and shadowy, but
Right.
hey, you
Mm-hmm.
don't play and do what Littlefinger wants, you end up,
Right.
and these references, I hope we're not getting to giving out spoilers, or I'm assuming most people here have probably seen
Yeah.
Game of Thrones or at least familiar with the character, but your typical, well, heck, you could go with modern day references, someone who's a involved in spycraft and collecting compromise, that happens today too. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
gives that person some leverage and some ability to make things happen that can't necessarily be traced back to them, but
Right.
they can have an outsized influence based on what you might expect.
Be, um, Beyond that, uh, the next step is just making the charts. What's what dice are you going to use? D20, 3D6, 46, 5 8-siders, whatever the hell it is. Whatever that comes out to. What's the range that you're looking to have? Um, and then for each one of those results or range of results within that greater range, you know, attack, defend, surrender, run, whatever it is, those are the choices that you decide to put in the table. I know what this leader is like because I created him, I made him up, or her. Okay, Empress, something, something. Uh, then you have an idea of, a representative spectrum of choices based on their personality, and you put that into a chart for when she's going to interact with another NPC or the players. But if you make it just centric to, some people go, well, I would just, this sounds okay, but I would do it only applied to my characters. Well, now you've just done AD&D. Now you've blown the idea is that even if they're not player characters, even if they're NPCs that your PCs have never seen from some far away, always be checking on what they're doing. Have them in motion because it might affect something later. So I do it with Star Wars. It's fairly, I have the Empire, the Rebellion, Hut cartels, various pirate organizations or smuggler organizations, stuff like that, and they all have their own tables as to what might happen. Um, and even if you're not in hut space, I'm still looking at whether this cartel is trying to expand its operations because its operations might be in an area of space you're in or something like that, or one you're going to, or one that might have uh, motivation or whatever. But I'm always looking to get the kind of game where don't have, not that it isn't fun. I'm playing one right now or running one right now, or will be, where there's 4 or 5 people and we meet weekly and there's a little story and they follow it. And that's great. But
I like
I,
those kinds of experiences too. I think you've got to have room for all of that.
but you can.
Where
Hmm.
And what's to say you can't mix and match that type of thing where there is kind of a loose overall theme, there's a story that's been building there, and where it goes from there, well, it's not gonna you're not gonna know the ending. Even the DM wouldn't know the ending, and I think that kind of makes it interesting
That's
for
the best part for
uh
me.
yeah, because then you're kind of almost playing it out on your side too to see how it goes, you know. If you don't know what's coming next, that can be even more exciting. Um,
Hmm. It makes DMing
rather
a little
than
less tedious.
right, rather than, oh, I've got to get everybody to the mountain of doom and they're not going to make it because they decided to go the wrong way. Now
Right.
what do I do? You
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
pretend the mountain was over there all along? No, that's not really honest. So, but then you just have to now you got to come up with a story for what happens if they turned left instead of right, which you
Right.
were expecting them to do?
Right. And you can have that thing where people go, oh, they can go find something to do. They can have
Mhm.
their adventure that is all about you do it any way you want. And the best again, if you could get more than one party or one group of people involved in something like this, it really changes everything. They may not interact. They may be thinking to themselves, why do I give a turkey that on Tuesday he's playing in the same world with some other people or whatever? But there may be that time where you do cross paths. There may be that situation where it connects the two of you or something like that. Um, and it makes a much more in-depth and interesting game and a much richer environment. And the more of that you got, the better it is. And again, maybe it is just you going on hex crawls. You want to go wander around the wilderness looking for stuff and getting in fights with something that crosses your path. Okay, you know, but maybe you want, like I said, you might be, hey, I saw that temple over there. It's probably got some cool jewels in it or something that we can go steal. Okay, go do that. Do whatever there. There's nothing you can't do. Uh, and I
Except
don't.
fly.
Well, unless that's part of the game, but it's but
Right.
yeah, but I don't
I'm
have to
being
prepare it. I know you're being yeah, but I don't have to prepare it. In fact, it would be bad if I did, and I don't have to. She says, well, okay, tomorrow I got to find a way to get them to do this or that or the other thing. I'm not hurting, not hurt, but I'm not hurting them like cats or cattle or any of that stuff. You know, I can wake up and it is as fresh uh, and unknown to me as it is to them, and that is really the funnest way to do it instead of opening up some notes. I mean, it's neat to create and write stories and all that, but you don't open it, okay, this is what's going to happen. I know what's coming, and I know not this way. Nobody knows what's going to happen next.
yeah, rather
Nobody.
than writing a novel, you're creating the elements of a world that's going to interact and have random responses that fit within the
Right.
context of that world. So it's unknown to you and to the players, and everything is a surprise.
Mm-hmm.
And you
And it
never know
does.
what you're going to get. And in the
Right.
end, you could end up with a really compelling story out of it, if you
Yeah.
kept track of all of it,
Mm-hmm.
which is something I think would be kind of a neat episode that we should maybe look at. And I'm going to ask our listeners and folks here to comment on um, as far as kind of best methods and ways of kind of keeping track of what's already happened, the progress in the game, how to take notes, who should be taking them, how to keep up with that, and ultimately what to do with the results of that. If you have a really compelling, exciting story that comes out of a gaming session, what do you do with it? Um, is it something that becomes maybe a creative product of all the players, these are things we could discuss. I think would be interesting to talk about and see. Um,
We'll put it on the schedule. Um,
yeah,
yeah. I got a couple of ideas lined up that'll be there too. So Um, do you think anybody? Let's see. Is there anybody else out there? We'll give you the Bueller call before we do the final wrap up with the last subject. Anybody? Something to say? Questions, comments, criticisms? Anybody? Well, hopefully I've done it justice. Um, there's that fine balance between deep dive and collegiate level.
Bueller? Yes.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. You can be in depth and then you can go too far and people are like, Christ, this. So, is the concept make sense, or do you need more detail, or was there something missing? Remembering I have to wait about 10 seconds for a response at least. There's a
Oh,
delay.
right.
There's a delay plus type time.
Oh, well, that can vary by
Yes.
person. Oh,
Yeah, right. With me, people are like, boy, do I suck at typing. It's gotten worse too. Did anybody see
I
my?
have noticed that too. My typing has gotten worse. You gotta, uh, I love
It's
your
a
what you've
guessing
done with your
game.
keyboard.
It
Yes.
it's the Hunt and Peck keyboard, and that's why I got to get a new one. No wonder everything looks like I don't know what I'm typing. I'm guessing. Um, so the last part was we mass combat. There's a lot of there's a lot of people. I see this over the years. Um, People go asking, "Well, you want to mass combat?" I don't know what exactly they're looking for with every one of them, but nobody seems to be. Uh, I shouldn't say no, making that vast of a thing. Obviously, there's exceptions, but there does seem to be a lot of people that are looking to hit a spot that they that they can't find when it comes to mass combat. Sorry about that kind of metaphor, but
I have some theories about mass combat. As
um,
an inexperienced, complete newbie who doesn't know what she's talking about, I have some ideas on the best way to do it.
well, what happens? We'll see.
No,
Okay,
I'm kidding.
well, there you go. The
No, I
technique, as it were. I,
right.
I I guess what I see is that there's a lot of people that immediately assume complexity. Oh, it's too detailed and it takes too long and it'll bore my people and I got to water it down and I got to make it really simple. And they do something super simple. And they go, this isn't really kind of a yawn or whatever. You can you you know you go too far with watering it down to the point where it doesn't really have any substance to it, and so um, you really only need a couple of things. The real simple way to do it is don't try to think about how can I modify the current stats for PCs into some sort of translated com. I see a lot of people trying to tinker with the strength versus agility. They'll take the attributes and come up with some. Just don't do any of that. That's number one. Just rate the weapons not based on any stat that you have in the books, just based on maybe use it as a reference, but don't try to use that mathematically or anything like that. Hey Tony, how's it going, man? um,
Hi,
uh,
Tony.
just say, well, this thing. Let's just do swords or blades, dagger, least. Two-handed sword most. In between is short sword, long sword, two-handed sword, broadsword, whatever. And then which one has the most lethality based on its ability to be, used or whatever like that. But have criteria that are simple, more than one thing, not just damage, but just a handful of criteria for the weapons, and then rate them as you see fit. And then, other than that, quality of the troops. Are they well trained? Are they well led? Are they morons? I mean, sorry to be rude, but some of these people or some of these races aren't too bright. So, just a few human factor criteria that gives them a score. They're brutish and big and strong, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be good soldiers. Um, you know, do they listen to orders well, or are they well trained? Whatever you come up with, just a few things. And so basically, all you need is numbers, quality of weapon, and quality of troop, which is again including their leadership and stuff like that. And then
Would you
modify, and
please go
then
on?
one,
Oh,
and then modified by whatever circumstances are going on in the battle, terrain, weather, things like that. Those three things. Then you have a total for one side based on the points that you've given them based on their weaponry and their training. Same on the other side, and those two scores are modified by terrain. Say if you're attacking across a river and you don't have a bridge, that's a problem. Your attack is going to be a lot harder. So your power is less. And the defenders, or if you want to do it where the defender gets a bonus, you can do it that way. And then just divide those two numbers. And then based on how much the answer to the division problem, and I know people are going, oh my God, he said division problem, and I sound like I'm in school, but it's all that. It's just the quotient. Is it 1, 2, or 3, or 4 or more? The bigger it is, the bigger the intensity of your victory over the opponent. And then come up with some basic effects. Okay, well, if they got creamed, what does that mean? Well, maybe there's none left. Or maybe they've retreated and run, or some combination of that. It can be very simple. It's just a matter of scoring them, dividing the scores, and coming up with a combat result based on that score.
a
I'm
question
sorry.
for you on that too. Do you separate out the units into, because in a lot of the games that I have played, and most of my experiences is with the PC side of things, with like real time strategy, that type of thing. Um, but certain units, you've got the you know archers versus cavalry versus the the differentiation between one unit type attacking another unit type, because that can make a difference. Like one would have an advantage over the other. Is that something that you take into account, and like you split the army up into those basic components of infantry, cavalry, and archery for the older style units, or mechanized? The modern warfare is going to have different categories, but it's all of a similar vein. One unit type is got an advantage over taking on another type. So do you
Right.
split up your army and then add up just those components? Like we're just adding up the infantry value, and then we're adding up the archery value and cavalry value, for instance.
I think for starters, here's the other thing too. There, when it comes to RPG mass combat, I'll answer your question, and this is somewhat answers it, but it's just a kind of an afterthought too. Real quickly, is that you have two things. Is it is the battle part of the story? How do you put this? I had this all worked out in the toilet when I was thinking of it.
Well, that's a great place to work things out.
Shit. But basically, there's
Exactly.
is the battle going? Well, when I get that out of my head, right? But are you contributing to the battle as commanders? Is it something where you're fighting the battle, or is it a battle where you're more of an observer or just kind of caught up into it? Is it just part of the story, or do you want it to be part of the? Let's put it this way: is it part of the story or part of the game? If it's part of the story, then you just want to get a quick answer the quickest answer possible. If it's part of the game, which I very much prefer personally, then you might want a little bit more detail. But as far as unit types and stuff like that, to keep it simple, that would be variable circumstances. And some of that depends on scale involved, um, you know, but I would put it under variable circumstances. For example, if you're um, knights charging archers, uh, there might be some bonus to your uh, combat power, something like that. Or probably from a wargaming design standpoint, there would be make more sense to have a minus to the combat power of the defender. So, um, but what I explained as far as just using points and such uh, for weapons and for troop quality and all that, that's to get a real quick rule of thumb answer and stuff like that. You can play it out as a war game, and that might be enough for most people. But if you use it a couple of times, the things like Magenta mentioned with the way that certain units interact will start coming up. And I think this is what happens a lot with people that make mass combat. They go, okay, I hate math and I don't want it to be complicated. And I don't want it to be like that gray haired mother that always talks on that one show about how everybody's a sissy for not being, playing real war games. But you play it and then it tastes like a rice cake. Well, yeah, but what about this? Because knights would bowl over those archers and all that, right?
Right, you didn't get a
variable
realistic result when you simplified it too much.
Exactly. To the point where it just seems stupid. Yeah, all you had to do was flip a coin, but it doesn't tell you a story that really tracks out if you were just playing out the battle in your mind. That doesn't mean it has to be, my St. John's Military Academy war game, but finding the spot, that in between usually means you kind of have to just chill out on anything that has detail or an added process bogs the game down and makes it too, I know everybody gets mad when I get into that thing, but you really do kind of have to let go of that. It doesn't translate to going all the way to one pole or the other. Just think of it as an equalizer, and you just gotta maybe just a little bit, a little bit higher than you expected, and you'll get something that plays out right without, giving you a headache. But those are the basic building blocks. Rate your weapons, rate your soldiers, and determine how much the terrain and the weather, which you surely should have, mitigates that combat power. And how much, not additive. It's not. It has to, it's a force ratio. How many times greater is the opponent's combat factor over the attackers over the defenders, or vice versa? It's not, well, I've got 2 and you've got 1, so I'm 1 over, so I win. No. You're 2 to 1. Everything was based off the old military maxim that came centuries ago, that you need approximately 3 to 1. So the difference is now 3 to 1 isn't just the whole story. It's not just about numbers. It's not, I'm a big burly German swordsman and he's a big burly Roman swordsman. How many do you got? Even then it was more than that. What about your armor? What about your training? What about your discipline? What about your tactics? Stuff like that. So there's a variance about how much you want to get into it. And maybe once you play this is the way all these games work. You play real basic, and then you go, yeah, you know what? You're right. This is kind of boring, and it doesn't really tell me very much. and then you just kind of turn the volume up a little bit more and then go to intermediate. Okay, well, now we've got this, I got a little bit of artillery and we've got some, rules about terrain or something like that. Okay, well, that's a little fresh. That makes me think a little bit more tactically. That plays, and you just kind of teaching people how
To
to
some
play. Hmm?
Oh, I was going to say too, to some extent, it comes down to whether or not you're looking to play a game based on luck or based on skill and strategy as well.
Well, there's some to that,
Maybe,
some of that too, yeah. But
yeah,
hmm
because if you're emphasizing luck, then I mean it's really just whoever has the best luck with rolling the dice is what it
well,
comes
there's
down to in the end.
uh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It
But
or
in that, I think that that's a place where some folks like to start off and then grow from there. Some folks like to stay in that realm of, preferring the luck of the draw as opposed to, having to think, about, well, I got to make sure that I'm sending these troops after this, or I'm looking at these factors because I wouldn't win in this scenario if, I tried to take on a much larger force that was heavily armored and had better weapons and better training than me. And, I didn't have some advantage like cover of darkness or element of surprise or something else that would, help me accomplish that goal, rather than just relying on luck.
hmm yep, yep. A lot of that is wargaming as a war game, as to be competitive or to compete against another player. The luck versus strategy thing comes out. Some people call luck randomness, and they call it randomness because if they call it luck, they know they're just looking for an excuse as to why they lost, and that's what a lot of the whole luck versus strategy thing is. I want a game with a lot of luck. Okay, because you can't win. Because some people are intimidated. They think that it's really about the knowledge and the skill more so than anything else. But um, as far as RPGs go, what are you looking to? Like, another thing to think of is what are you looking to get out of it? Is the battle? I mean, what is it? There's a military force, two military forces fighting, and you can't get to your destination until you find out who wins. Well, at that point, you don't need to come up with much.
Right.
Do you want it to be random at all, or do you just want to tell a story? Do you want to? Are you predetermining it? Then you don't even need mass battles. But if you're going to not predetermine it and you're going to, then all you need to do is go, well, how many of these? And yeah, they got better weapons and they got better armor and they're better trained and they outnumber the other one. Well, then any given day, somebody can win. Just there's also Battle of the Bulge that I'm playing is a great example. If you took the numbers uh, of men versus the in Bastogne versus the number of men that surrounded them, it wouldn't look too good. But there's all sorts of things that can play into that. Um,
Even the hard to quantify things like the motivation of the troops, like how
hmm
determined are they to win?
hmm
What do they
hmm
have at stake?
Right.
Are they just fighting for someone who gave them orders from a remote, they were sent there by their country and maybe they've got a fervor for their patriotism or whatever, but they're not fighting to save their family farm and their everything they've ever owned. They're
That's right.
not the company or the country that's been invaded has got maybe a little bit more motivation as far as fighting back and it will be more likely to risk it all versus someone who is just sent out to the hinterlands to quell the upstart rebellious folks and they don't really care.
Yeah.
They just
All of
want to
that.
get back home to their family,
hmm
just God, this is such a terrible experience. I just want to get back home.
hmm
So the morale of the troops and the motivation is going to make a huge difference. But you're right. I mean, sometimes if it's just secondary to the story, why even really spend a lot of time on it? But
Well, that's what
on
most
the
people
other
get.
hand,
They're always going to default to the I'll just hand wave it. But if you're looking for the rules, then what are you looking for the rules for? But generally, I think that there's so much conversation about these things, and I see it a lot. Really, I'm looking for the right set of rules. Oh, I've tried those. Have you tried these? Yeah, I've tried those. I've tried. They're just it's either so ridiculously lightweight that it makes no sense, or there's some mechanic in there where people start pulling out the cliches and go, oh, it's got modifiers. That's complex. I don't like
Right.
rolling 8-siders, so I don't want to play that one or whatever it is. Yeah.
Or you've got to roll for virtually every single unit on the on the field, and it's like, oh my god, that's going to take forever. I got 100 guys. Um, so yeah, there's that as well. But I
But
think it
this,
really kind of depends on context. But that can get
there is there are scalable. That's why we talk about scalable realism, because there's that, and there is some difference in scale. Now, what a lot of people do is go, well, sure, sure, sure. If it's skirmish, then you can have all those details. But if you have more of those details, it's more about the right details, not about having details and not having details. If you put a 10,000 men versus 10,000 men, and all you're doing is going, well, I'm just going to roll one die, it still sucks. There's still differences between the two 10,000, but a lot of people say, well, the bigger the unit involved on the scale, the less you can, think about variables and stuff like that. It doesn't matter how many people Napoleon brought to Russia. When it started snowing, so it was a problem for everybody. And they go, well, you don't want that kind of detail. So it's not about, you got to find the right questions to ask,
or
not
if
ask
Napoleon
less
hadn't have
questions.
just yeah, if Napoleon had been able to prepare in advance, though, it wasn't a foregone conclusion that he was going to fail at that. He just was not prepared. He underestimated the power of the Russian winter. You know what
Well,
I mean? And didn't show up with the right gear. He thought he could, make do.
yeah. So, um, but and some of this stuff goes into uh, regular combat as well. Fatigue is an issue. You talk about fervor. You can be the most fanatic mother in the world. If you're out of air, it doesn't matter anymore. There comes to a point where physical exhaustion will overwhelm your.
Or if your troops have marched so far they've got blisters and their feet are infected and they can't, then they're not going to be effective fighters. It doesn't matter.
Right.
They
Yeah.
could
And that,
be the crack top veteran team, but if they can't even walk because they've marched for, hundreds of miles on ill-fitting shoes, and now they've got blisters and infections and whatnot,
yeah.
and they're
Yeah.
half of them are in the infirmary, you're not
Right.
gonna win.
Yeah. So that's why I look into things and time. I look into things like fatigue and time, and that's why, uh, and here's an example of scale. Weapon speed. Weapon speed doesn't mean anything when it's 100 swordsmen sitting in some sort of unit. But if it's your party, weapon speed can make a difference, whether it be drawing the weapon or swinging the weapon. Just like a gunfight. If you're both starting with the thing in the holster, whoever's getting it out first is going, has a hell of an advantage, obviously. Um, but so, like I say, it's not less questions, it's the right questions. And if it's a lot of people, if it's a large scale, then there's different questions. Leadership, you know, logistics, stuff like that. If it's a smaller thing, it's more about, are you carrying a decent sword or a shitty sword? What's your armor like? And like Magenta says, are you feeling up to things? Are you motivated, or are you exhausted and diseased and you know I'm sick of this shit and I want to go home and I don't care about this, and this isn't my fight to begin with, and stuff like that.
And
So
do you have a general who's like, hey, you got to make sure these guys are healthy and we got proper food and clothes and gear for them? Or is it a guy who's like, you should be tough enough to overcome anything?
yeah,
And then the guys are like, okay, yeah, yeah, I'll remember to do that. But the reality is you can't just, willpower does not overcome infirmity.
right. So one of
It
the
just, it doesn't.
and it does right. It I mean, there's right. So you look at something like I know this will be things you might not be all that familiar with Magenta, but there's War Machine, which comes in Beckme, and that's something I see more as a quick mathematical. Well, most people won't consider it quick comparatively, but that's just to get an answer. That's to say here's how the battle went, and when it's a narrative in amongst a greater story. And then they made Battle System for which is that's a miniatures game. That's a war game. You can play Battle System. I mean, I played the Beckme thing as a war game itself, but I tinkered with it and all that sort of stuff. But Battle System was uh, about being a commander on the field of generally with the war games, and so are your people involved? You know, uh, do you want to fight the battle, or do you just want to tell the story of the battle? And
Are you playing like domain play where you're the general or the leader, it's your fiefdom, it's your fight, or are you just passing by and like you said, waiting to see who wins so you know whether or not you can pass through safely in that country, or you're just waiting for it to be over and find out, um
it's like yeah, but um, I guess this analogy is probably more accurate. I don't think I'm being very it's not. But if you ever played one of these games where you have a strategic level like Total War or Empire at War, where uh, you can drop down to the next level. If you've ever played Total War, you've got the little pieces on a big map, and when they meet, there's a battle, and you can go down and fight the battle as the commander of those particular troops on the battlefield,
or you can
or
auto resolve.
or you can auto resolve. To me, it for most people, uh, War Machine is the auto resolve. It's manual because you don't have a computer to calculate, but you're basically just calculating the auto resolve. Whereas the battle system is, you know, let's get some tactics involved and how many, catapults and where am I going to put them on the, or where am I going to put my archers on the wall to keep, the enemy from getting up or whatever it is. And um, I see that as the two different things, but they're two different scales. Those are the two different types of mass combat, depending on what your needs are. But in the end of the day, if you if you would to go look at how battle system, as an example, was derived, when you go look at a unit card or go through the rules of battle system, and there was a formula of some sort, and I use that word, and that probably makes people go, "Oh my God!" Now he's talking about algebra and all that, but it's true. There was something that rated that unit. You know how good. How many there were. They're using swords, so it's this many points, and they have extra magic, so it's this many points, or whatever it is. They were both constructed in the same way, but they were developed a little bit differently, and they're slightly different machines when it comes to, or systems, when it comes to how you use them. But um, but you could use War Machine to do 50 on 50 or 50,000 on 50,000. You can't do that with Battle System. There's a point where you can make that thing so top heavy it topples over. And if it's not because of, like, if it isn't, for most people it might be rules complexity or just the tedium of playing a large battle because of the detail involved in that. I wouldn't have that problem as long as I'm playing with a lot of people. If I'm playing with two people, I'm right there with you. If I'm playing with 15 people, I can work that out. But if you, it's a miniature system, so you the size and the cost that comes with fielding giant uh, miniatures, it becomes prohibitive with battle
Hmm.
system. Like the greatest, if you want to talk fantasy, Lotro, you know, D&D things, the greatest thing ever was um, 84, 83, 84, whatever it was. Um, they, whoever the hell they are, I forget now what the organization was, but they did uh, a 1-for-1 miniatures battle of Helm's Deep, I think it was. And
Wow.
oh,
That's
and
ambitious right
oh,
there.
geez. What if you don't know? If you're not a war gamer, you know what 1-for-1 means. It means each model means one model. There's a lot of times you'll hear a unit scale in mass combat or wargaming where it says 1-for-100 or 1-for-50, and that means that one model, one physical model you buy, represents 50 of whatever it is, 50 soldiers, something like that. And that's so that you don't have an army that is just financially prohibitive or just too big to to put on a table or something like that. But aesthetically, 1-for-1 is kick ass. It's
Wow.
epic. It's Hollywood, and they did it for these Lotro battles, and they had to get they had to prepare by
Right.
they had to prepare by I'll tell this story, and I guess we'll have to wrap it up because that sounded like a was that a yawn or did you get jumped on?
No, it's a little neuropathy. Sorry, in my
Oh,
feet, little
sorry.
nerve pain.
Well,
Sorry.
anyway, so they put this is an old Gen Con story. I love these Gen Con things. So they put out word to everybody, hey, we need to do this, and people brought their own miniatures to contribute to the deal. And they would have a system they developed to mark the base in the bottom so that your stuff wouldn't get lost or mixed up or something like that. And then people brought their own stuff. And one of the biggest regrets I had was I never brought. Well, sometimes I bring it, but I very rarely use it. When I went to Gen Con, I was I would spend like a month. I swear to God, like a month and a half getting my itinerary because I was like Clark Griswold.
Mhm.
You know, every effing minute's going to be nothing but pure gaming enjoyment. I don't have time to just go snap some pictures or have a chat with. I'm playing some games, motherfucker. So I never did do it, but I did go and look at that. I didn't get to play, but I did go look at that one. I wish I would have snapped more pictures. I don't have them anymore, but it was absolutely the coolest thing ever. 1-for-1. It's not the only 1-for-1 I saw, but it was great. I saw a Waterloo 1-for-1 done in Thiensville.
Wow.
Tony knows about that. That was our buddy Fritz. 1-for-1, 50,000. 50,000 15 millimeters on this giant float. What they did is they went and they rented out a factory. It used to be a shoe factory in the late 1800s, early 1900s. It was a big place. And the place was empty except for the building. So it was a gigantic, like wooden gym floor. And they played Waterloo 1-for-1, 15 millimeter. There was people that were some of those armies that those guys had were 5-figure price tags on them.
Oh my goodness.
But awesome. So when people say, "Well, if you play war games too big, it's unplayable or whatever," you don't need less war game. You just need more war gamers, and you can do it, no matter what it is. It's true. So that goes with everything, and that's why I'm talking about this in the first place. The living worlds, the mass combat's kind of a secondary thing, but the living worlds is to bring more and more people to the same world, playing not physically at the same time necessarily, because we all have different schedules and all that, but with using turn-based time segments, everything can be coordinated. So even if you're playing it at 10 o'clock on Sunday and the other person's playing it on 5 o'clock on Monday, you're going to be playing on term one at the same time at the end of the week. Whatever you did is going to be matched up with whatever they did. It all happens at the same time based on these segments. It's a way of keeping things linear and chronological and in order. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Okay,
makes
just make
sense.
sure.
Hmm.
Everybody understand what I'm. So
Blocks of time that
right,
everybody's you're engaging in them in a different actual time, but they're a block of time,
right.
so they all are aggregated into one block, and that's when what your result comes from.
So essentially, what you've got here is, and I've already started building these, um, is is a kind of tabletop MMO, and I've got it for my beloved Star Wars, but I've got it for Greyhawk. I've got it for my own custom stuff. I've got it for BattleTech. I've got it for um, some stories that me and Magenta have come up in with in the past. I've got it for a kind of Red Dawn scenario, and there's more coming. And what you can do as a player, if you want to get involved, is you just sign up to be part of the server, and then we can try to get you hooked up with people that have a schedule, that can coincide with yours. The thing with scheduling is you got to have a little leeway, and I know sometimes that's impossible for people, and I reality sucks, but you might, if you can just maybe give yourself like a half an hour or an hour. I could do it between two, or so that it's not as hard to match people up. And is there going to people that are going to show up and go, well, I can't match up with anybody, I'm sorry? Yeah, especially if there's not a lot of people to show up. But of course, the more people show up, the more likely we will be able to uh, get you with a party or a group. If you can't get with one, we can do play by post, with the caveat. Now, again, people don't like to be pressured to rush. They've got enough to do, but there has to be a deadline or the shit just don't work. But
Right,
it's
and
not,
that's reasonable.
it's an email, it's nothing. It's like a paragraph at most that you're writing here. It's not going to kill you. I don't want to sound like I just sound like somebody's dad. You can mow the lawn. It won't kill you but really, it's not. No one's asking you to
Well,
fill
I
out
don't know.
tax
That
forms
could
or anything.
happen.
Yeah.
I know of a guy who got his butt cheek removed by a lawnmower blade. It can happen. You don't know. The lawn could kill you.
I knew a guy. Well, I didn't know the guy, but I knew of a story. It was on our local news where a guy he was winding his watch under his lawnmower. He was acting like he was repairing it. Turns out he was winding his watch, and I'm not talking about his Timex. And something happened, and
Oh,
he got John Wayne bobbited by his own. Yeah, yeah, that was a weird one. That was in
what?
Milwaukee. Yeah, to see, yeah, it was outside in the yard, and apparently somebody, this guy, but
That's got to be a guy thing because I have never had the urge to wind my watch so bad that I would do it under a lawnmower.
in the yard. Yep. And he was snippy, snippy, snippy. So yeah.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I'm
but anyway.
baffled. Okay. On that note,
Ah, so
wow. And
um,
I never heard it called that either, but okay. Um, anyway,
watch winding. Oh
yeah,
yeah, that was the common. Sure, that's what we always used to.
that's got to be a Midwest thing because I've heard many other terms, but not that one. And I'm not going to repeat the terms that I have heard here
You
because
mean
I don't
flogging
want
the
your video
dolphin?
taken down. Oh my goodness, no, I have not. But anyway, I am actually, and not in any relation to your comment about the lawnmower, although I will probably be thinking about that later and just still scratching my head on why what you couldn't wait till you got out from under the lawnmower? Did you not have a car to hide in? What the I don't get it.
I think it
Why?
was just airing it out.
Oh, jeez. He tried to trim his hedge by a lawnmower. Okay. Oh boy. Anyway, people are strange. Some people are strange. Not everyone. Okay.
So
No,
we're
we are all strange in our own ways.
everybody's a little bit weird. Yep.
Yes.
So we are going to go with the two night thing. There's been
Yes.
a couple of viewer uh, suggestions. There's been a couple of
Ah.
requests, and I've actually kidnapped one of Michael's requests of another streamer, and
Oh.
I I hope that's okay. But I'm like, I got to do that. I wanted to do that anyway, um, but I don't know how to put this. Um, my sister says you should trim it down a little bit. Um, but I also had a couple people go, "Hey, just be you and be authentic. We're kind of tired of uh, the scripted and the high production, stuff. It seems, to them that they prefer having a fireside chat with somebody that's in their, uh, you know, own home. Now, I used to do that. Excuse me.
Oh. Oh, that's preferable to the like I how do I say this nicely without the but I have noticed there is a certain level of like manufactured excitement that sometimes
Yeah,
occurs and yeah that it's so exciting and
yeah.
I
I used to. I used to.
maybe it's just my personality type but I recoil at that and
Yeah,
I maybe we're
it
not
seems
the only
forced.
ones.
It seems forced, and yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Um, and I mean, hey, the people that are doing it the, these ways, some of them are skyrocketing. I've seen more than a
For
couple of
them.
people, right? More than a couple of people that have shot past me like a bullet. So if just because it's not my cup of tea, but it isn't, and one of the other ones that I just don't get is when they've got the people's faces in these weird poses all over their thumbnail. You know what I'm talking about? I mean,
I have no
whatever works
idea.
for you. That it's kind of this common thing. But and she's like, you got to do that sort of thing and all that. Now, a couple other people, I'll be doing this stuff. A couple other people do want to see short form things. We both know need to do that. Um, uh,
Brevity is something that I think is a worthwhile project. Being
I
able to say the same thing concisely and to the point, that's always good.
yeah.
So I'm down with that and trying to maybe trim things down to a more reasonable level and maybe just make some shorts because not everything has to
Well,
be,
I can do the
you know,
shorts, but
deep dive. Sometimes you can wade into the shadow pool sometimes.
well, the thing we're gonna do next will be though. So get your marathon shoes on because it ain't going to be a short one. But we'll start
Oh
doing
no,
that.
no, no. I do these shows barefoot.
Okay, well, you're going to need to develop some souls. But I don't want to rush through something. I think it's cool. I don't know. I guess people don't like the whole morning zoo type. I don't know. I'm saying people. This is a couple of folks. I don't know how many of not everybody spoke up, but my sister said we should probably do some short form stuff too. I can do
Well,
that.
yeah, you gotta mix it up, and short form is totally valid and
Monday,
worthwhile projects.
yeah, right. Monday I recorded 4.5 hours. You did two. The time that when you left, we stayed on, but that's like the after show show. That was just all, you know, talk.
Yeah, you're in
Just
charge of the
general
after
talk.
party.
I didn't post
Yeah,
it.
I am the party pooper.
Well, you've got the medical thing, and that was fine. And we covered what we intended to cover. Some folks were kind enough to because I don't get a lot of interaction, just to interact with me on a completely social thing, and that's great. Um, I didn't think that 2.5 hours of that was anything anybody watched, so I cut it down to two, about 2:12, and posted that up there
Okay.
on the YouTube. So the thing is I like the live and I like people talking. And I like interacting with people. And if the short form is fine, and I got no problem making them, but you don't get to interact with people when you do that.
Right.
This, you get to talk to people. And what I'm hoping to be able to do is not just interact with folks, but get them up here to in chat, but to get up here and talk to us, you know, in a real time sense. And someday, what would be great is to get them playing, and getting involved in that sort of, maybe not playing a whole game all the time or anything like that, but getting involved in some activities, maybe some game demos, some combat rehearsal type of things, just participatory things like that.
Hmm.
I'd like to see that. But I would
Right.
love to be able. I would love to be able to put out, you know, a weekly game session too. That would be great, especially with people who are listeners, to get them in, or viewers, get them involved. That would be great. Tony says, but you should also post on a daily schedule. That way, people, right? They, he's right. You need to be consistent, and we're trying, but
And I want to
life,
apologize to everyone because some of the consistency issues are coming from me and with my health issues. And previously it was my work schedule. Now it's some health concerns that have unexpectedly popped up. So, and the holidays, and I have, family, you know, concerns too. So it's been a little bit of juggling going on my end, and I'm trying to get things
right.
pinned down to be more reliable and more something that I can be here um,
We said this
more
before
frequently.
once, yeah, and we said this once before, and because we thought that the health things had cleared up.
Yeah.
Maybe we shouldn't have been so definitive, but Hope was speaking, and we said, "Yeah, we're past that, and now we can do more of this." And then
Mm-hmm.
we tried, but yeah, we'll keep doing that. That's why we want to do two at a time. Um, so, Michael, you still here? Because I don't want to. I mean, I don't want to. Oh, do here. I can get an answer. Uh, I forgot this guy that. Okay. So he asked Doomsword, which is a guy that plays on another. See, there's a guy named Delver. Bill Sylvie is his name, and he runs a stream, and he's lucky. He's been doing it for a long time, and he's pretty good. People like his content. He gets to play 2 games a week on the air with people, and Doomsword is one of the guys that plays. And Doomstar started making movies. Mike Michael had asked him, and I totally wanted to do this. So just because Doomstar doesn't know mean I can't. But uh, I just shit. Nah, I want to get to it. Probably should have had it set up before I brought this up. But let's see, what was it? Oh yeah. Here we go. This is what I want to do. Now we're going to have Magenta do this, and there's a good, so get ready because this is going to be a deep one. Um, Michael writes, I'd like an intellectual deep dive into 1E combat mechanics, timekeeping, segments, weapon speed, etc., with real world encounter resolution examples. Um, and I'd like to do that with Magenta. And if other people want to get involved, uh, it would be neat to do it with. Maybe all do it together. Anything like that. What do you think, Magenta? Save me. I'm stammering while I read.
I'm game. I mean, oh, yeah, that would be fine. you might have to kind of prepare me to get me up to speed on that and, walk me through it. But yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
Oh, Doomsword responded with, "Coo- I put in a Cookie Monster gift because I'm a weirdo. Cookie Monster knows that this will take most men of knowledge 100 hours. For me, it will take 1,000 unless I can learn to shut the fuck up until I'm over the target." Well, I'm right there with you, Doomsword, because obviously I've got that problem too. But I do like to uh, uh, just make it chill and all that and just talk. So I think Michael's left. That's all right. He's good. He works and shit. So it's cool. Thanks for stopping by. Um,
Yes. Thanks everyone for participating tonight and for listening and taking the time to spend time from your busy schedule with us. We certainly appreciate it. And of course, another reminder, please, if you enjoy the content and want to support us and see us succeed, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell too, so that you can be updated when we're going live and that kind of thing. And think about if you want to get up and make. We'd like to have this be a forum where we have um, not just us speaking, but our listeners and you know come on up and say what's on your mind too, so we can have some kind of participation that way. So um, thank you guys again for sharing your evening with us, and I think we're going to wrap this up, and then next show we're going to work on and get out by Monday for you. Mondays we're doing 6 p.m. Correct?
yeah, yeah, that's
So
right.
we're going to do that's for anyone who's early, or if you want something to watch while you're eating dinner, or something to do. Um, Mondays at 6, and then Wednesdays we'll stick with the 9 p.m. schedule. So that way, if you're, you know, needing to have prime time hours to hang out with us, you can. And as always, everything's going to be posted on the YouTube channel. So if you ever miss an episode, you can always tune in and listen later. But thanks again,
So just
everyone.
right, and thank you. And just to reiterate in a clearer sentence, or is that what we're going to do on Monday is we're going to uh, have a Magenta go through um, a fairly detailed, all rules on the table combat encounters using AD&D and see
All right.
what it's like to watch a relative newbie transition from the simple OD&D into the hardcore, supposedly hardcore AD&D. That's what's
Okay.
up.
I will sharpen up my synapses and get ready for that then. So but I'm not going to study in advance because I think the point is to kind of learn and learn as we go. So if you're okay with that, is that what you're looking to see is like
Yeah, we yeah.
because I
Mhm.
I've never played that rule set, so it would be new. This would be completely brand new. So we can
Mhm.
see how that is for if you're just going in and just diving right in without any waiting. We'll give
Yep.
it a try. I'm game.
Mhm.
All right. Well, excellent, you guys. It's been a pleasure as always, and I'm gonna say good night now and hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your evening, and we'll see you again on Monday or Wednesday.
All righty. Bye bye.
Good night.